Well, good evening, everybody that may be listening. My name's David Young. I'm with the Boot Brisbane team up here in Cairns, and with us this evening is Bill Bates, head coordinator of the Boot Brisbane campaign. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, David. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good. And our special guest for this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is Carolyn Moriarty, who is the NQ First candidate for the Burdekin. Carolyn, thank you very much for taking time out of what would be a very busy schedule, as well as your evening. So thank you for joining us, Carolyn.
Thank you, and good evening to you both.
Oh, excellent.
And to all your listeners.
Now, Carolyn, I want to introduce yourself to the listeners that may be out there that would love to hear more about, a local woman for the Burdekin. And you're a former boss of the Bowen Tourism and the town's iconic Mango Visitor Information Centre. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I covered a maternity leave position there in 2015 and 2016. And had an absolute ball. It was the first time I had anything to do with the tourism industry, and I think doing it in Bowen was probably the best place to be based.
Oh, that's fantastic. And having covered the big Mango, now you decided to move on to bigger, better things at State Parliament. So that's a big step. But we look forward to seeing what you can do with the rest of the Fruit Loops that might be in the Parliament, that you could keep them straight, eh?
Well, let's hope so.
Well, yes. So you're born and bred in Hewitt and educated in Charters Towers, and then Townsville, and you're a fifth-generation North Queenslander. But you're currently at Claremont. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Oh.
I've been in Claremont. I moved to Claremont in 1990 as a school teacher, and so for most of the past 30 years, I've lived in Claremont.
And you were
not quite a local.
Oh, you're a Central and North Queenslander through and through by the sounds of it. But you mentioned teaching.
Absolutely.
You were a teacher for 17 years in a classroom. That's correct, also, yes?
Yes, that is correct. So I was a primary school teacher. I started my teaching career in Charters Towers and then moved down to Claremont. I did 2 years out in Hughenden and then moved back to Claremont. Did most of my teaching career in Claremont. And then I did a little bit of relief when my stint with the Big Mango finished in Bowen and even Hamilton Island. I had to go down and do a couple of days relief down there. And then I moved to Rockhampton and did a couple of years down there relief teaching before returning to Claremont.
I'm sure it was a hard gig having to be involved in tourism in the Hamilton area. That would have been a very lovely gig, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful spot.
I'm very unfortunate to never have been able to visit the Whitsundays yet, so I very much look forward to that sometime in the future. So,
yes, you'll love it.
Oh, well, I can only hope that it's sooner rather than later. I guess having been an educator of Central and North Queensland youth, it seems apparent that you're very well involved in the local communities where you're a senior rugby league for the local rugby league club. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been actually involved in rugby league in Claremont since about 2004. So I was their secretary back in 2004 and 5 and quite a few years after that. Then when my youngest son started playing rugby league, I got involved in the junior rugby league and I was their president for quite a few years. I've also, with my rugby league interest, I've written articles for the QRL website, and I was also actually one of the inaugural finalists in the Women in League awards, and the NRL flew myself and my husband to Sydney and put us up at a motel, and we went and mingled with all the NRL stars for the night.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was a bit of a treat.
Oh, that sounds like a great experience.
It was wonderful.
Well, it sounds like you're definitely a champion in rugby league, so we definitely commend you for that, for being involved in the local sports. I mean, we only had Jason Borg on just a little while ago, and his involvement in the local sporting culture of Mackay is something to be attested to too. So it's fantastic to see a couple of candidates come out of NQ First that are both heavily involved in sporting in Central Queensland. So good on you.
Well, it's such a great way to build a community, is getting involved, in any committee that supports, the community. It's just a wonderful way to build a sense of belonging for people. And of course, the sporting aspect keeps you healthy and everything. So,
of course,
it's a really positive thing to do. I've always enjoyed volunteering.
Yeah, it sounds like you've learned many valuable things there, especially how organisations can run, and how it can be difficult in organising committees and whatnot. But that brings us to the current day, where you've obviously had the urge and the need to want to take your love of the community and hopefully represent the seat of Burdekin. So do you want to tell us about your experience that's led you to the point at which you decided, do you know what, my hand needs to go up because our community could do better?
Absolutely. So I guess over the past 50 years of my life, I've seen the demise of many rural and regional towns in Queensland, especially in North Queensland, the places that I visit. And I guess that is really disappointing and disheartening, and it's hard to explain to people who don't experience that how difficult it is for people who are living in these regions, that they're not actually experiencing the same standards that people in the southeast corner expect, you know. So watching the demise of communities was certainly a huge motivator for me to put my hand up. And also, obviously, the current situation where not only are the northern parts of the state underrepresented, but also underfunded. I think it's just completely unfair, and something needed to be done there. So that too was a huge motivator. And probably the main one was I would really like to see North Queensland reach its full potential, so that my grandchildren don't feel the need to travel to the south of the state to achieve their full potential. So everything they need is going to be up here. They can be proud that they live around here. They can be proud of the efforts they put into to building their own communities and their own families, and they don't feel the need to move away so that they can, you know, achieve their full potential.
Yes, and that was the other. Well, that's exactly right. Is we can only want the betterment of our community, so that the future generations, whether it's the grandchildren like you mentioned, or our children that are coming immediately after us, that there's enough prosperity and opportunity in the growth of the local community in which they can prosper. And look, the more power to the Burdekin should you hopefully gain a seat there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'd like to see. Like I've been travelling around for the last, since June, since my campaign was announced, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and in some places that I've been to, they are actually defeated. You know, they say, you know, we're just sick and tired of people coming and making promises and delivering nothing. And I hate that. I hate that people feel that way, that they feel that there is no hope for the future. So hopefully if North Queensland First can deliver on 31st of October, we might be able to start progressing projects that give people a real sense of hope for the future.
Yes, and look, we can only look forward to the outcomes that may happen there, because you're not wrong about the promises made and promises never kept when it comes to the sort of spending that might be promised in election time and then never fulfilled, because it seems that, and we've brought it up in many previous discussions, that there's a horse and a cart scenario where local investment in, say, health, like a maternity ward, which is a common one in central Queensland, I understand, especially out west, more west from the coast, that it's a dwindling population. The need is minimising, so they can justify the reduction of a service. But it's like, well, hang on, how is that community ever going to prosper if the reduction of services occur? Because it's going to actually put another dagger in the back of that community, because no one's going to want to start a small family there. No one's going to want to bring their family, and
exactly right.
knowing that services have dwindled to the point where that someone down in the southeast corner can tick a box and saying, yep, let's shut this one down and let's shut this one down. These are important things for local communities, and if they don't have the faith that the community is safe for both themselves, their partners and their children, there's no chance for the grandchildren to have opportunity there. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. You know, it's not just hospitals and health, it's our education systems, you know, like there's such a thing out the west called bypass schools, where if a year 12 or a senior school drops below a certain number, they are classed as a bypass school, which means that parents can get subsidies on boarding schools, you know, which is which is detrimental to the local communities. I mean, it's good if you want to send your child to boarding school, but it's not helping out the community. It's not helping the local school to keep their teachers, and it's not helping the kids whose parents can't afford to go to boarding school.
Look, and
helping their education.
Well, that's exactly right. Some could argue that was a sort of justified way of approaching it, but it's also making the problem go away to a certain extent. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's throw the money at the problem and it goes away.
It's not addressing the issue.
Of course, yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
I think we're on the same page. I just need to clarify it in a way that I thought was ridiculous, and I totally agree with you there. But look, and that's the other point as well. With your extensive experience in education, I might as well ask a question when it comes to that, which is a field that you're very acquainted with 17 years experience. Look, it comes to a mindset where, did you ever have occurrences where, and I don't want to put you on the spot in any way from your previous experience working for any schools, but did you ever have an experience where you say, you can just tell this curriculum that I'm implementing right now was definitely from a Southeast Queensland classroom mentality?
Oh, yes, of course. I did a short contract at a school in Rockhampton, and I was teaching year 3s and 4s how to ride a scooter. These kids that could, ride motorbikes around the back paddocks of their properties, and here I am teaching them how to ride a scooter. It was a bit of a waste, really.
That is
bizarre. There are probably so many better things that they could have been. Yeah, it was bizarre.
That is bizarre.
Right, that was part of the curriculum.
We've had some interesting things brought up about people and their experience with bureaucracy of the Queensland state government, but that's a doozy. We've had an example of a gentleman who has a farm up in Lakeland who couldn't build a dam on his own thing, and you just left shaking your head. And I must admit, Carolyn, that story did the same thing, because teaching a Central and North Queenslander child how to ride a scooter is, while it might be elementary school, it was far beyond elementary, that one. But oh, geez. Look,
exactly.
we can only hope that policies can change so more suitable things in all aspects of Central and North Queensland life can be better suited to the way in which we live our lives. And look, education is definitely one of them, because an example I'd like to bring up is one from a news story. I remember, I think it was from the end of last year, where the Queensland government rolled out a policy that every classroom would be air conditioned, and I think they started in Ipswich or something something along those lines. And it leaves you bewildered, and to think, well, why wouldn't you start with the more temporary, the more humid and more uncomfortable sort of classrooms in the whole of the state?
Yeah. Exactly. Often their policies are geared towards, as we've seen over the last couple of months, towards vote winning. So, I just can't trust any decision that comes out of the southeast corner at the moment.
Oh, I don't think anybody has cause to, because I think one thing that we can all agree on, no matter what your preferences and no matter what your ideals are, is that everybody is generally sick of the way that the current state is and the way things have gone for far too long. And I mean, that's obviously why we at the Brisbane campaign feel strongly about one of the best ways, if it's the best way, is just to rid ourselves of the whole system entirely and create our own, which is more suitable to all of us that live up here, and allows for us to ensure that those future generations, like we were saying just before, can have an opportunity and don't have to go to Brisbane for education, or don't have to go to Brisbane for important health operations. It can be done here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and that's going to require people to step out of their comfort zone and take a bit of a risk, because I know North Queenslanders are quite conservative in nature, and they're probably a little tentative about, stepping outside and taking a risk on a minority party. But in reality, if they don't do that, everything's going to stay the same. So whether they vote for the ALP or vote for the LNP, nothing will change, because those two parties, the two major parties, have to secure the vote in the southeast corner to get power of the state, to govern the state. And once they get in, their focus is going to be on the southeast corner. And once again, we will be left with very little So it's going to require North Queenslanders, if they want to see change, they're just going to have to vote for a minority party, preferably North Queensland first, where we're standing in the electorates, because our party, as you know, is the only state party that has embedded in its constitution the creation of a new state.
Yes,
and we've just released our policy.
Exactly, and that's on the back of Monday's policy. Yes, yes. Do you want to tell us?
That's right.
Do you want to refer to the policy that you guys just released Monday in brevity?
Yes, I can. So the policy that was released on Monday is our policy statement towards a statehood for North Queensland, and it basically sets out a bit of a process to follow. It's not meant to detail any specifics about, where the border is, what the capital is going to be, what the name of the state's going to be, but rather a process that can be followed so that we can work our way towards that separate statehood. So the first part of that process will be the establishment of an independent commission to determine all those details, determine where the borders go, determine, where the state capital should be located and so forth. And that commission will be made up of people, of experts, who are experts in constitutional law and also economic experts, as well as people who are invested in the north of the state. So once that happens, then we can pass a referendum act that provides for a referendum allowing the constituents within the borders to vote on the proposition of establishing a North Queensland state. So it's going to, the North Queenslanders are the ones that are going to be participating in the referendum. And I think that's important because currently there's, 4 million in the southeast corner, 1 million in North Queensland. If it was a referendum open to all Queenslanders, well, we won't have a chance because they won't want to cut the purse strings from North Queensland.
Well, and that's a part of the problem, is it, Carolyn? You outlined it very clearly there. Is we have many occasions where people bring up saying, it might be, they think it's a terrible idea, even if you can justify it in any economic population means, it's irrelevant. So you say, well, guess what? All we're asking is that the people of Central and North Queensland have the opportunity to vote, and then that is the referendum that you've given as an example. And it's like, guess what you get to do? Vote no. It's how a referendum works. But if and when more than 50% of the population vote yes, shut your mouth and enjoy the prosperity that will long come from not having the burden of Brisbane and the southeast corner upon us anymore, where we can actually get the infrastructure that we need, and we can actually spend the revenue that is created in the central and northern regions on ourselves to actively achieve that prosperity. We look forward to it, and
exactly right.
We definitely hope that you guys are put in a position where you can enact upon that for the benefit of all of us. So as far as we're concerned, we have told everybody now is coming up to any election, always look for those candidates that are looking out for you. And as far as we're concerned on the new state issue, you guys are leading the way, head over tails before anybody else on this matter. So well done to you guys for releasing a fantastic policy on Monday. And it's exciting to see, like I said, if you guys get the opportunity to enact upon that.
Yes, it will be exciting. It will be really exciting. That's the one common theme that I get when I travel around and speak to people, is that there is this huge disconnect, a huge divide between what's happening in the southeast corner and what's happening in the north of the state. One of the constituents I was speaking to works at a local primary school, and they invited some friends up from Brisbane. They transferred up here from Brisbane and invited some friends up, and they went for a drive on a dirt road, and these people that were visitors from Brisbane had never before driven on a dirt road. They've lived in Queensland all their lives. I mean, I just can't even imagine anyone who hasn't experienced driving on a dirt road. It seems almost laughable. And I guess that is just an example of how different life is for us in the north compared to, what they have in the southeast corner.
Well, that's where Central and North Queensland kids learn to ride their scooter before the age of 3, isn't it? The dirt road.
Exactly.
I guess that
you don't need footpaths.
well, it's all the more reason why you could tell that riding a scooter as a lesson was definitely out of a southeast corner classroom. But listen, that comes back to the disconnect. The disconnect is a great example of how everybody in Central and Southeast Queensland, Central and North Queensland, left eye rolling when it comes to the fact that somebody can come with an idea from Brisbane and implement it and try and tell us that it's the right way to go when we know that it is not the case. Why? Because we live here. And I think one of the most important components that people must remember is when they come to make their choice at election time, whether it's the state or the federal, is what do you want? Do you want a Brisbane's man or woman in your region, or do you want your region's man or woman in Brisbane? And ultimately, always we should choose who is best for our local communities when it comes to it. But obviously, if you want a representative with long teeth, a new state is the way to solve that. But listen, we'd love to hear more about what your hopes and aspirations are for the seat of Burdekin, Carolyn, because, look, having lived in and around that area for most of your life and having taught there, having, been in charge of things like the Big Mango, what do you see as opportunities that haven't fully been taken by the scruff and made beneficial to everybody there? What's an infrastructure project or some sort of upgrade that will bring economic benefit not just to that region but would have brought up to this point to the whole state? Is there something down there? Because I must be honest, I'm not familiar with the Burdekin well. I mean, obviously we know that it's a heavy agricultural area a little bit away from the coast. It's very strong in cane farming, and the agricultural around all of that is strong. So tell us a little bit more about the industry and industries around Burdekin and their importance to the local communities.
Okay, well, the Burdekin Electorate extends from Clermont in the south, where I am, actually south of Clermont, and it extends north to just south of Townsville. So, and it comes down the coastline, taking in the Burdekin Shire, so Home Hill, Ayr, Brandon, Guru, and then down taking in parts of the Whitsunday Shire Council, Bowen and Collinsville, and Mount Coolin, and then it takes in the majority of the Isaac Regional Council. So that's Clermont, Moranbah, Nebo, Glendon, Dysart, Middlemount, and Clermont. Did I say Clermont? Yeah. So there's about 10 more than 10 towns and communities that are in the electorate of Burdekin, and the industries are as diverse as the towns. So the Isaac Regional Council part that's in the Burdekin electorate, it's very heavily mining. So, the mining, most of the mines around Moranbah, Dysart and Middlemount are all part of this electorate. And the mining industries obviously rely fairly heavily on the FIFO population, which puts great pressure on local governments and the communities that they operate in. So there's quite a few interesting challenges that face those communities, and one in particular that is of great importance, especially to the Isaac Regional Council, I guess, is the way that the local government funding is allocated. Their funding methodology relies on two aspects, and one is the permanent population of the Shire, and the other one is the unemployment rate. So in the mining communities, the unemployment rate is historically very low, and but the permanent population, I think only 47% of the workforce in the Isaac Regional Council is permanently based here. So the other 53% are FIFO. So that creates some really huge issues. The pressures on like the sewerage, the water, the roads are significant, and in return the local government, the funding does not come from the state government. The funding for those people that work up in these areas on a FIFO basis is directed to the places where they live. So, in Brisbane or, the Sunshine Coast, wherever they fly in from. So that's a significant problem and something that I would really like to sink my teeth in if I get elected and try to make a difference there. There's other things. Sorry?
If I could just jump in.
Yeah, Bill, did you have a comment?
2006. Yeah. the 2016 census showed that there were more miners in the Greater Brisbane area than in the rest of the state. So
That's
you
correct.
can see we have these industries, but the bulk of the money is spent in the southeast Queensland. It's either wages or the company profits or the contracts that are the servicing contracts or whatever are done by companies that are basically headquartered in Brisbane or even national companies. So the actual wage expenditure actually it helps their economy, not ours. I think FIFO is something that sort of probably we have to live with. But there again, I think there's other things that can be done in regards as a separate state. And there's like the towns of Mackay, Rockhampton, Cairns, Townsville grow, so they've got plenty of facilities, amenities. You might have a system where more people from those still in North Queensland towns fly in from those cities, and their money is spent still in our regions. And the other thing is there probably has to be some sort of means where the royalty system has to change in regards to maybe the royalty system for a new state would be that a portion, or say a third of the royalties that come in are spent in the immediate area, creating the facilities and amenities and services that people want, and that may encourage people to live there so they're not flying out. And then the other thing is, well, the royalties are sort of also breaking up a portion of it into that general region spending as well, and then another portion that goes to the whole of state government revenue for distribution across the whole state. But local communities have to get some benefit out of the wealth that's coming out of their areas. And maybe one thing we could have is, like Joe invented the old idea that no more death taxes, and that was a great boon to the state of Queensland and followed on by the other states eventually. But maybe we could have something like no payroll tax or something like that, but where people actually flew in, flew out, well, you could put a tax on that. So it would encourage businesses to hire locally or provide accommodation, even in the townships and things like that for their employees. And so the wealth stays here. So a lot of people don't seem to realise the proportion of money that's earned here but is spent in the southeast corner. Like, you look at the case of cane farmers, they all contribute to the cane growers group. So they, out of their hard-earned money, they put it into the cane growers. Well, the cane growers, their headquarters are located in Brisbane. They're staffed by people from Brisbane, university-type graduates, probably never worked on a cane farm in their lives because they're communications media-type people or some other expertise in business management or whatever. And they've got these significant buildings that they have to pay rent for. All that money is going to the southeast economy. Now, to my way of thinking, and I've discussed this with Paul Shamry, the chairman of Cane Growers, why the hell isn't your headquarters where your industry is? At least put it in Mackay or somewhere like that. Somewhere
like the Burdekin, at least.
And then the people... Oh, well, whatever. You pick a town and then say, right, here's our headquarters. If you want a $200,000 a year job, being the communications manager or something like that, or the CEO or whatever, you live in Mackay, you spend your money in the immediate area, other than go on holidays down to the southeast, and all the cane growers funds that they're putting in is actually being spent in the bloody regions that they live in, and helps our economy, not the southeast Queensland economy. That's just something a lot of people don't think about, of how much money is basically of our pool is actually benefiting southeast Queensland. It comes into same things like infrastructure projects up here. Well, a lot of the contracts are won by companies in the southeast. That goes into their economy. All the administration from from the public servants. That's in southeast Queensland. That goes into their economy. So we might get take our convention, say it's roughly a $200 million project. Right, we get $4 million contract for one part of it, and then we also get, we win the contract up here for the fencing off and the rubbish disposal, but the bulk of the project, all the big ticket items, are won by southeast Queensland or Australian companies, and same with the project managers or land lease, and then the administration comes from the southeast corner in regards to the government aspects. So of that 200 million, probably less than 20 million filters into the Cairns greater economy, and the rest helps the southeast Queensland or some other part of Australia's economy. So that's the sort of things where sort of people got to take into account with the difference. When if you get a separate state, a lot of those things will be adjusted, and we will get more benefit out of a project if it's done here, because we'll be servicing that project a lot better.
Yes, I agree.
I think an interesting point, Carolyn, that you made, though, as well, is it was about the infrastructure when it comes to even things like sewerage. As long as you know that there is a 50% workforce in a large industry like mining, it does promote funding to not trickle as well as it probably should from the state level down to the local level, knowing that it's easier just to constantly create band-aid solutions to what should just be an overhaul of a complete infrastructure. And I guess that is what we are faced with if we are going to be more reliant on that type of scenario. Would you agree?
Yes, well, it's not a true reflection of reality. You know, if you're only funding infrastructure, like local government infrastructure, for 50% of the population, it's never going to be enough, is it? So
of course,
it's just it's just not reflective of reality.
Look, and wouldn't the Burdekin? I want to bring to another point as well. The Bill just made as well is like the cane growers as well. There's an economic component of the centralisation of an organisation like cane growers in a place like the Burdekin or Mackay, but there's also what if you're a farmer that needs to go and see your lobbying body about some problem you're having with a governing body about your growing of cane? Why should you have to go to the local airport, fly all the way down to Brisbane? Sure, it's only a short trip, but it's irrelevant when you could probably make a 1-hour drive to the headquarters and say, what are you doing about this? The representation is all backwards, and all I know is if I was a farmer, I'd be questioning why that it is set up that way and say, hey, listen, if your kids aren't growing up where my kids are, how do I ever expect you to have an investment in their future? And then certainly not necessarily care about the industry you're supposed to be protecting that I'm in. And all I know is that if the Burdekin can't have 50% of their population, more than 50% of their population in the industries there, and it's reliant on allegedly funding for only 50% of the population when some of it flies in, as well as organisations that are supposed to promote that region and community, like agriculture lobby groups, the mind boggles, and we need to be rid of that system and just entirely come back to a more logical scenario.
Absolutely, we do. I know one of Jason's announcements was for the return of Sugar Research Australia to Mackay, and committed, I think it was $14 million for the relocation of them back to Mackay. And also, the mining safety regulator, bring them back away from the southeast corner, closer to the mine, so that they they are accessible and, they're there where the mining activity is occurring. We're definitely all for decentralising, organisations, lobby groups, and also public servants away from the southeast corner, so that they can accurately advocate for the people in the north.
Well, exactly right. And one of the things I've touched on, and it's only my personal opinion, of course, but I guess what you referred to as a disconnect earlier is there's actually a lack of emotional investment when it comes to things being structured in this fashion. Because like I said, how would I ever expect somebody to genuinely convey what is in my best interests and my local community's best interests and live in southeast Queensland. If their children aren't growing up within a vicinity of my children, my neighbours' children, my friends' children, my sister's children, then the emotional disconnect is obviously going to play a part in how they actually make their decision-making processes. And I just think the sooner we can have an opportunity for us to take the wheel and create our own destiny in many different facets, like representation in the parliament, which hopefully could be more localised in a new state in the future, but like these governing bodies and their authorities, because it's got to change.
It does.
Yeah.
Something has to change, and what has to change is people just have to take that risk on October 31st to put North Queensland first at number 1 on their ballot paper, and hope that we can secure that balance of power and start pushing for a better representation and better funding for the North.
Well, and we can only hope that is the case, and we definitely wish you the best of luck on that. And look, besides the fact that you guys have released your policy on Monday about initiating the process for the creation of a new state through a body of commission, which would then hopefully end in a referendum, it's part of the reason why you guys have ended up at first starting with policies like royalties for the regions, because that demand for an unhappiness with the people of Central and North Queensland in the way that infrastructure is being built and the money is being spent in the southeast, would you find on the campaign trail that is something that is definitely on people's minds?
Of course. Especially, I think it's probably more apparent in the mining parts of the electorate, because they're the ones that are, digging the coal that delivers all the royalties, or delivers the majority of the royalties. So they get pretty upset about what sort of services they get delivered in their hometown. So there's a huge question being asked. What are we getting in return for all the royalties that we're giving you? Because it doesn't seem to be very much. Our roads are terrible. Our schools are underfunded. Our hospitals are underfunded. What are we getting in return? How is our life being bettered by all these royalties that we're providing?
But you are getting your fair share.
Yeah.
The 100-odd billion debt that the Brisbane government's run up over the years, if you stay with them, keep the status quo, you get your fair share of debt. Now that equates to $20,000 per person that's man, woman and child in Central and North Queensland. So the longer we stay, while they build roads and tunnels with the money that's dug out of the ground in regional Queensland, and they spend digging holes in southeast Queensland to put trains through, well, yes, you get your fair share of that debt. Now, here's a point for you. There is no means, if we actually separate, and this has been discussed with Professor Flint, there is no means of the state government of Queensland, if we split, transferring debt to the new state. There is no facility. That debt actually belongs to the sovereign risk of Brisbane Parliament. That's where it is created. Now, when it comes to actually separation, I would expect there will have to be some sort of compromise made if there's a deal, but it could be exactly like Brexit. If that fails, Britain walks away with paying nothing back to the EU. Now, at the worst case, an amicable agreement would be we would take over the outstanding or shortfalls in the public servant superannuation that we transfer to our state. And the other thing that basically would happen is any projects that are either been in progress or signed up for, and the contract's been signed, well then we're liable for the cost of those. But I'm not quite sure if there's any multi-billion-dollar projects in Central and North Queensland that are sort of running at the moment or been signed up to run. So I don't think we've got much of a worry there. So I'd expect we'd basically walk away with pretty well zero debt. So that's another thing. And the thing is, for those people who want to stay with South East Queensland, you watch your money every year. If it took a decade to become a new state, that decade we would see more than $70 billion worth of royalties and taxes flow down to Brisbane's coffers, and we'd probably get next to nothing in regards to infrastructure returns on that. But don't worry, we'll continue to get the debt piled onto us.
Yeah, it seems like there's a money hole being dug in Brisbane while everyone's digging holes in Central and North Queensland to pay for it. So it's a crazy situation. And I guess, Carolyn, do you mind for a minute if I go through a rigmarole that I always go with people when they put up a bit of a stalwart against how infrastructure is spent in the state? Do you mind? Look,
sure.
No, look, I usually say to people.
I don't mind.
No, I usually say to people, what's the biggest infrastructure spend happening at the moment in Queensland? And they go, I'm not sure. I say, well, right, how many times do you go to Brisbane? And they say, well, I guess I should be asking you this. I'm sorry. So, Carolyn, how often do you go to Brisbane? Just off the top of your head.
Not very often.
Well,
I used to go a lot more regularly.
But there we go. But this is the component is I would tell the person then that, do you know the biggest infrastructure spend happening at the moment, to my knowledge, is the Cross River Rail. And then they generally say, is that the thing that's being built connecting like the Gold Coast to Brisbane? You say, yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you only go to Brisbane, that once a year they might answer. Sometimes they say, oh, I've been once in the last decade. It's like, do you realise that you are paying the biggest infrastructure spend project at the moment for a train connecting one part of southeast Queensland to the main part that the Parliament is interested in, and you'll probably never catch it. And when they make that connection about the fact that it's like, do you know how many dams, do you know how much highway could be upgraded with the amount of money that is being spent on this train line? I think that one singular moment when the penny drops, they go, oh, okay, I sort of see what you're saying. And it's like, yeah, we should not want this.
No, that's exactly right. Well, we don't want it.
Oh, well.
I remember one of the defining moments when I was considering putting my hand up. I was watching the news, and the tourism minister announced a new pedestrian bridge would be built across the Brisbane River. And at a phenomenal cost. I can't remember what the details were now, but at the time I thought, why? Like, how many bridges do you need to walk across one river? How about we go and build a Burdekin bridge across the Burdekin River, between Ayr and Home Hill? How about we go and rectify some of the old timber bridges that are held up by good luck, through some of the smaller roads in the Burdekin Electorate? How about we go and seal the roads where kids are, being driven along in school buses on dirt roads with, double trucks running along, in front of them. So, a pedestrian bridge, really? How many votes are you going to win with a pedestrian bridge? It's just ludicrous. Their waste is embarrassing.
Well, and that's the point, though, as well. It's another component of why representation in Queensland is distorted, and it should be corrected, and a new state is the best solution. But when you have electorates and representatives condensed in such a small area, and we have it to our knowledge, which is fairly exact, it's about 73 of those representatives are in a 250 kilometre radius of the Brisbane CBD. It could easily be that footbridge might ensure representatives be re-elected in 2 or probably 3 or 4 of those electorates if they're on neighbouring sides of the river and all next to each other. So this is what we have to put up with, and this is why the representation for Central and North Queensland must be corrected through a new state. It's as simple for us when you make as many examples as you can, when you can tell people that, look, you see the debt mounting up, right? You see where the debt is being mounted up in. You do see that they're winning votes in the concentrated areas of Brisbane of the southeast corner, by making people's lives 5 minutes shorter or 10 minutes shorter when they go to work, it might be great for them, but it's not great for us. And when you see the death tallies, when you see that the Bruce Highway is as bad as it is, why should a lane be widened that's only 30 kilometres long in a busy section of the Brisbane M1? And look, as far as I'm concerned, the sooner we can rid ourselves of the way that the state politicians look to themselves for creating answers and winning votes for the next election, the better. And look, hopefully, the more power to the miners, and predominantly you guys who are leading the way on the new state front, can really upset the apple cart, can really just turn everyone on their heads in that regard.
Yes,
Can I just jump in there?
Yes.
Yes, go, Bill.
I just want to talk about the seat of Burdekin in general, and past elections and that. So historically it's been it goes back to the old National Party stronghold. But if we just go back to the 2012 election, you had Rosemary Menkins, I think that's her name. She won the seat, and she actually held that seat for about 11 years. So she was a long-term person, probably well known in the community. Yes. I presume she might have family connections down that way or whatever. So it was obviously a big stronghold. And if you look at the election results for 2012, you can see she got about 12,000 votes. The Catter's got about 7. Labor got 5. Greens got about 700. Family First about 600. So you can see that it's basically a more conservative seat historically. Dating back to those days. Have you ever met Rosemary or know of her?
Yes, I have. I've met Rosemary.
I'm sure she'd be a wonderful person to speak to. Or if you have a chance to speak to her, tell her about our podcast and see if she'd be like to contact us if she'd like to be on it. It'd be great. Yeah. Then we go to the 2015 election. Well, that was the election where we sort of went from the great Campbell Newman bloody swing of 2012 to decimation of the LNP. But Dale Last won the seat, so he's already been in there two terms, and he'll be going for his 3rd term. Now you could see in 2015 that the National Liberal Party vote had dropped off by some 2,000. And that was that 2,000 odd was picked up by the Labor Party actually, while the Catter's vote of 7,000 got split between Palmer's, Independents, and One Nation. So that's probably the first year we had the smokers board of minor parties that sort of really broke up that conservative side of the politics vote, and preferencing started to become a real big factor in determining who was actually going to get over the line. So, Dale's percentage in that election was 37%, while the Labor Party was 26%. Now, if you move to the last election, right, well, suddenly you're getting Labor having 10,000 votes, or 36%, and the LNP dropping to 9,000 at only 31%. And then you had One Nation picked up 29%. So it becomes a real big change in regards to what's happening there, and whether it's I don't know. I don't think there's been a real build-up in population there of urban type areas in the Burdekin. So it's obviously
so what's happened?
General dissatisfaction with the LNP, and I think Dale is actually the furthest LNP member in the state. So that's the first LNP member. I think the next one is Colin Boyce, was right down past Gladstone in Clyde. So of the 17 or 18, counting, if you count Collide, which I don't really like to count because it goes far too south. It actually gets within 164 kilometres of Brisbane. But it's still, as far as the Electoral Commission, it's still registered, counted as a Central Queensland state. So you got the situation that you only got 2 members in 18 in the LNP, and the ALP has 11 members in the current parliament. But the interesting thing is One Nation in that election picked up 8,000 votes, and the preferencing almost got Sam Cox over the line, the preferencing down from Labor. And so Dale Last really only holds that by about 0.6% in margin. So it's a very vulnerable seat for the incumbent. And I think now you've got the situation, there's now 4 candidates. So Dale's and yourself have been joined by Michael Bunker from Labor. Again, and just announced on Tuesday, Sam Cox came in for the Catters. Now, Sam Cox, I did notice a few articles and comments in the Cairns, in the Townsville media in regards to Sam Cox changing Guernseys pretty well, because I think he was the member for Mundurucuru as an LNP in the Newman year. Then he moved on to contest as One Nation for Burdekin in the 2017 election, and then he's suiting up this time for the Catters. So I think that's probably one kink in his armour, that the fact that he's had so many Guernseys on, it might be a bit of a sore point with people who change their coats too regularly. Obviously, you usually get a Green candidate, but their polling is probably about less than 1,000 in any election. So at the moment, there's 4 horses in the race, and it's going to be a real bit of interest in regards to preferencing. And I don't know how the parties are going to look at that, but hopefully something can work out for at least for those parties that want a new state and made a commitment, or at least verbalised on that commitment, that they can sort of get the preferencing done that gives one of those two the best chances of getting in Burdekin. So how do you see the election as it's going to roll out over the next five or so weeks?
Well, I just want to touch on a couple of things that you raised there. So in the 2017 election, that was the first time that the Burdekin Electorate actually included all the mining towns. So prior to that, it was purely along the coast. So it included up to some of the southern suburbs of Townsville, and out as far west as Collinsville. So it didn't include Nebo and Copperbella and Moranbah, Clermont, Dysart and Middlemount. So this will be the second time that it has been contested with the current boundaries. And at the last election, that was just before, or just after, when the ALP decided to go anti-Adani, which was really detrimental in the mining communities. People were very upset about the ALP stance on Adani and the mining industry in general, and so that seriously hurt the ALP candidate Mike Brunker for that last election. So it will be interesting this time around. It is, like you said, quite marginal, and there is certainly as I've said before, a great disconnect between the south and the north. And every time I speak to people, that's what they tell me. They're so sick and tired of the major parties ignoring us. So we just have to keep encouraging them to do something about that at the next election. I'm expecting... Sorry?
In regards to the coal belt, do you think... I think recently the LNP position on coal is basically lines pretty up with the same as the Labor Party. They're not exactly pro-coal or anything like that.
They're almost merging into one party, the ALP.
I mean, that's the big problem. The LNP really, its base is in the interest is in securing the votes of those constituents of the 4 million people down in the southeast corner. They've got to write legislation and policies to cater for the sensitivities of those down there, rather than needs and aspirations of people in Central and North Queensland. So do you think your familiarity in that coal belt can help you in regards to sort of getting favourable consideration from the people whose futures will continue to depend on the coal industry and the infrastructure that goes with it, rather than let's face it, I'm sure most people don't really want to vote themselves out of a job, and so basically, one seat I just don't understand is Gladstone. Now, it's one of the biggest coal loading facilities in Australia. It's also I've got a coal fire station there. Most of the people employed there have got something to do with the coal industry or the power station or servicing or whatever. Yet they vote Labor consistently, and the policies coming out of the Labor policy in Brisbane is basically shut the coal industry down and shut the coal fire power stations down, and yet they still turn around and vote for the people who technically really want to put them out of a job. I just don't understand it, but maybe you can talk about that with your constituents down in Claremont area and down the coal belt.
Well, and didn't we just have the CFMEU retract all sort of support for the Labor Party in the Central Queensland area because they're anti-mining and so anti their membership? I saw an article come about that just recently.
Yeah, they I think they withdrew their funding for the ALP. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they have retracted support for all the candidates in Central and North Queensland, but that would be wonderful if they would. Just one other thing that I wanted to mention there before too, and Bill was saying, it's not just people in the Central and North Queensland that recognise the huge divide between the South and the North. I was at the markets in Ayr on the weekend and I spoke to this lady from the Sunshine Coast and she said even the Sunshine Coast gets nothing, which I thought was quite interesting. She said everything goes to Brisbane and the Gold Coast. But the other thing I wanted to touch on too is that, you know, if these 73 people, 73 electorates in Southeast Corner, if the two major parties are doing their darndest to represent those people, that's great because that's their job. If you are elected as a elected representative, it is your job to represent the desires, the needs, the wants of the people. What we need to recognise is that the desire, the needs and the wants of the people in the Southeast Corner have no relevance to the desire and needs and wants of the people in the north of the state. And that's what's driving the push to separate the state, is that we can't call ourselves all Queenslanders because there's nothing that connects us with what the people in the Southeast Corner want and what people in the north need. So, while we say that the two major parties are pushing the needs and wants of the people in the Southeast Corner, that's what they have to do. But it's got nothing to do or nothing relevant to the people in the north.
Very well said, Carolyn. Very well said. And listen, we've approached an hour, and that might be a fantastic comment to be able to wrap up tonight's show. we don't want to take any more time out of your busy schedule in the evening. I'm sure you need some rest because you're probably very busy tomorrow at another local event where you can convince the people that, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and yourself for the Burdekin.
I am. Yeah. I'm at the Moranbah Workers Club tomorrow night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
There you go, the Moranbah Workers Club. If you're in the Burdekin, go head on down and have a chat with Carolyn about the future of the electorate in which you live and how your support for a wonderful candidate like Carolyn and the others ranking first can hopefully be put in a position to make all of our lives better throughout the whole of the Central and North Queensland regions. Look, it's been fantastic speaking with you, Carolyn. Bill, did you have any final comments that you'd like to say before we?
No, I don't think we. I don't think I'd like to add any more than that because I like Carolyn's summing up there, which is something we've always recognised from the start of our campaign. So no, it's been a wonderful opportunity to speak with you, Carolyn, and I wish you all the best in the upcoming election.
Thank you, and I'd like to really thank you guys for all your support because it is. It's hopefully the beginning. I know you've been doing this for quite a few years now, but hopefully we can start to get a bit of traction and really move the new North Queensland State project faster along, move it along.
Yes, and the sooner we can get away from...
Your support's been invaluable.
Well, yes, and you know what? All the more reason that we're happy to support you because you yourselves have the faith and have made the commitment to the people of Central North Queensland, which is all we've ever expected of any Labor, Liberal or minor party or individual running for a candidacy. And if you don't have the faith and the commitment to make the opportunity apparent for us to make our own destiny, like you guys have, then you're not warranted with any sort of support from anybody in general. And we wish you the very best of luck. Look, if you're listening and you live in the seat of the Burdekin, you definitely have a strong opinion here with Carolyn Moriarty, and you know when the 31st of October comes around that you've definitely got a fantastic option when you're looking down at the piece of paper to fill in. So, Carolyn, with that, we'd love to thank you again for joining us on tonight's show. We wish you the very best of luck on your campaign leading up to the 31st of next month. And we really hope you can get across the line and really, like I said earlier, upset the apple cart. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much and good night.
Good night. Look, if anyone would like to learn more about the New State campaign, they can visit bootbrisbane.com where there's lots of information about the campaign, the historical components, as well as what you can do to help if you need to. There's also a membership that you can join if you wish. If you'd like to learn more about Carolyn Moriarty and her campaign to win the seat of the Burdekin, you can visit her Facebook page. You'll be able to find her there by taking her name in. Likewise, you can visit the NQ First, North Queensland First website, where you can learn more about all the candidates that they're running who have just recently released a commitment and a policy into a non-negotiable clause where they will help enact the commission into the investigation into a new state. Thank you to Yes to a North Queensland State on Facebook, which is basically the sponsor of tonight's show, and you can visit there and take part in the community that believe in the future for Central and North Queensland State. Likewise, bootbrisbane.com is our Facebook page. You can go along there and follow what all the antics in which we get up to try and keep everyone honest when it comes to the idea of statehood. Likewise, Monday nights, if you've got nothing to do, you can listen to a colleague of mine, Matt Maloney, on his show Northern Vibe, where he gets interesting guests like Carolyn has joined us this evening. You can learn more about what's the comings and goings of Central North Queensland leading up to the state election. So with that, good evening, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good night.